Guess we are live now. Hello, everybody. I think Gui is still trying to log into StreamYard. I think that's fine. But without further ado, we can start our first Ruby Tuesday of the year. Gui's here. Hey, Gui, are you in? we are live now.
Okay, good.
Okay. All right, so as I was saying, welcome everybody to the first Ruby Tuesday of the year. I foresee we'll still be doing online for quite a bit. So hopefully everybody find this format kind of acceptable, I guess. All right, so this week we are sponsored by Engineers MI for StreamYard, KRUB, and as well as Folkwell, who is doing a raffle as well. So with that, let me add Rufina in to talk more about that. Hey, Rufina.
Hi, guys. Hello. Happy New Year. Happy
New Year.
2022. Okay, so I'll start off about Folkwell. I actually joined for the last Ruby meetup. So if those of you who don't know about Folkwell, we basically help connect talented software developers to the right company. So a bit about our community in Folkwell. We've supported Women Who Code Malaysia in the past. We've supported Google Cloud Malaysia, KLJS, Laravel community, and we also help sponsor the NASA Hackathon Malaysia. And more interestingly, we actually did our own hackathon back in 2020 to help combat COVID. So we actually garnered over 500 participants in Malaysia, which was really awesome. Then moving on, Folkwell actually originates from Japan. We have over 40,000 registered members with us, mostly Japanese members, and we started a YouTube channel when the pandemic hit. So from that YouTube channel, we have over 80,000 online attendees. We've had 150,000 YouTube views, and Folkwell itself has had 800 clients with us and over 9 years experience. So another interesting fact is that we had the very own DHH. He's the creator of Ruby on Rails. He featured in a Folkwell held event, which was completely online. If you search on YouTube, you can actually see his video. We actually got it translated in Japanese to help out with our Japanese engineers. So that was pretty cool. In the past, we've also had international speakers from Amazon, Google, and GitHub. So you can also search some of those videos. They have quite cool topics that you can hear about. So we still have 2 more Grab food vouchers worth 50 ringgit each. So the last time, the mechanics is pretty much the same. You have to sign up on folkwell.io. You fill in your developer profile, and all you have to do is complete this by end of today, which is the 4th of January, 2022. And then I'll announce the winners via Slack. So do take note, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. All you have to do is search for Folkwell. And on another note, you can also contact me at ravina@grooves.co.jp. I have a job on hand. Basically, the CEO, she's looking for a very skilled Ruby developer who has also mobile development skills. She created this startup basically when COVID hit. It's an app to help connect psychologists for those who need mental help and other health help as well. So please contact me. The company that I'm looking for is Plus Vibes for the Ruby developer. Thank you so much. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ruvina. I guess the saying goes New Year, New You, right? So New Year, New Job could be another saying. So if anybody interested to broaden their network, definitely look out at Folkwell. And also there's an incentive, right, for people who aren't already on Folkwell to join in and grab that grab voucher. All right, Ruvina, thanks so much.
Bye, guys. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Sharing my screen. Yes, so that was Folkwell. Again, if anybody interested, please reach out to Ruvina. She's on our Slack as well, which if you're not on already, I will share the link momentarily. So yeah, we are on Facebook, where most of the activity happens. I think I forgot to post an update about Ruby meetup there. But yeah, most of the stuff happen. But having said that, most of our event infos are on Meetup. So definitely check us out on Meetup and follow us there if you're interested to follow what's going on with Ruby Tuesday. GitHub for code related stuff. And as I mentioned earlier, Slack is where most of us are. So, for example, Ravina is there as well, and all the organizers are there. Or even if you have any coding questions or want a second opinion to bounce idea, or just want to chat about Ruby, definitely follow us on Slack. We sometimes do community hangout in Discord as well. So we don't always do like a speaker talk format every Ruby Tuesday. Sometimes we just hang out in Discord and we do like code clinic, for example, where if anybody has any questions or if they want like another idea on like to do refactor or want to find people to work together on an open source project, for example, Discord is where we hang out during those sessions. All right, so I'm Gui and Gui from Penang. Right, moving on. Gender reminders. So first reminder, if you comment or chat, we might pop up like to answer your question or to talk about what you bring up. So your profile name, profile picture, and comment might show up on the stream. Second reminder is the event code of conduct. So we follow the Ruby community conduct guideline. So just make sure everybody's aware. All right. Hiring shoutouts. Gui, do you know of any? I didn't check right before this. Yeah. So sorry, Gui, go ahead.
No, really. Yeah. Go on.
Okay, all right. I was gonna say Facebook. Again, Facebook is a place where many people would post like, "Hey, we're looking for Rails developer or Ruby developer," and also Slack. We do have a jobs channel there as well. Or even if you're looking for roles or opportunities, do feel free to drop by. Hey, I'm a Rails engineer of how many years I've done this and that, looking for another opportunity. And as Ruvina mentioned earlier, Folkwell is also another way for you to expand your network as well. So yeah, check out those. I don't have any on top of my head for hiring shout out. Right, so today we have one talk, which is pattern matching in Ruby by Haas. So let me bring Haas in. Hey Haas.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Are you ready? Are you prepared? Do you have any screen to share?
Yes, I do. Let me try to figure that one out.
No worries.
How do we share that? Slides, yeah. Share screen. Yeah.
Wait, hold on.
Can you see my screen?
Yep. So yeah, I guess the stage is yours. Looking forward to pattern matching in Ruby.
All right. Just give me a second. Just let me get set up for a minute. And then we can get started immediately. All right, let's go. Hi, my name is Haas, and as per Ruby Tuesday tradition, my name has been misspelled. It's Hass. So just for that one. Usually Jimmy is the one who's responsible for misspelling my name, but like he's not here today, so we give him a pass. What we're going to speak about today is pattern matching. Pattern matching is a feature that has been relatively new in Ruby. It was first introduced in Ruby 2.7, and it has been expanded on. And now even with Ruby 3.1, there's some new features that have been added. We're going to take a look at some of those. All right, so what is a regex? Regex is a matching. It's a pattern matching syntax that you can go ahead and get text out of any type of text. So you want to get a partial out of a full line of text or even a full document. So this is essentially a way to match patterns. You will essentially say, this is the pattern that I'm looking for, and you will try to extract it and match it and get match groups out of the pattern that you're matching. And this is the simplest form that everybody is familiar with. And essentially, If you know a little bit of regular expressions, you're going to do great. So case statements. Case statements are also a form of pattern matching. So we have a variable here that we're trying to figure out what the value of it is, and we're trying to match it against a range. So if it's within, like 60 to 79, we're going to get a B. And as you can see at the bottom of the screen, these double line arrows, they symbolize what has been run. So once you run this program, you're going to get 75, and it's going to tell you this is a B. We want to take it a little bit further. So if we have a normal grade and then like an Asian grade, so we can also use some case statements to get on that. So this time around, we are not matching a literal value. We are matching it with a regular expression, and we want to get it from the beginning of the sentence, and as long as it begins with our alphabet. So in this example, if it begins with a B, it's a bad, and a C is catastrophic, and that's how it goes. So what makes a case statement work? Essentially, there is a triple equality check. What is a triple equality check in Ruby? So when you want to check if two things are equal to each other, you would use two equality checks. But once you use a triple equality check, you actually get a completely different value. And a case statement is actually where it goes, and it goes ahead and checks on our triple value. So this will be explained in just a little bit, okay? But our first problem comes here. This is where pattern matching tries to fix some of these issues. We want to match two types of strings, or like two values that are off string. How do we go ahead and do that if we do not have the literal value? So in this example, this will not work because it will try to match it to the class. So we're saying like this is the literal string pattern, but then when we're trying to compare it, we're trying to compare it to the actual object. If we do a triple equality check, this will run true, but in this instance, the triple equality check is being run on the array, so that will not match. So we have two types of arrays which are not equal to each other, and this is why we do not match. Quick quiz. I don't know if we can get comments or feedback, but if we cannot, then Gui, you are my person to answer the question. What does 5 triple equal integer get us? Gui is not here. Gui does not want to respond. It's okay. All right. So 5 triple equal integer, even though it's a triple equality check, it is actually not true. This is an important thing about the triple equality check, is that it has to follow the left-hand side. So the left-hand side is a type of, and this is why we are able to say like, is 5 a type of an integer? Because the integer is on the left-hand side. So again, when we go back to this example, our string, we can essentially match against these class type, but we cannot since it is wrapped inside of an array. Okay, there's an easy fix for that. We can just go ahead and say, based on these, give us the class on each of these objects. And then now, can we match it against string and string? And yes, we absolutely can. All right, but this also falls a little bit short when we're trying to do something a little bit more complex. So say we have two strings. We care about the first one, we want it to match equally. And then the second one, we just want it to match by type. This is not going to be a go. Or we can go ahead and start doing things where like, okay, this is a literal string of pattern, and this is, the class type. But then that gets a little bit hairy, especially when we do not know exactly how long the array is, what type of values do we have, and what is before. We can also match things that are not even there. So this is what brings us to the problem that, that is limited by the case statement and is solved by pattern matching. So this is one of the briefest explanations. So pattern matching consists of specifying patterns, we understand that part, to which some data. So this is the most important part to keep in mind when you're trying to figure out how do you separate your object from your data. So pattern matching talks a lot about the data that you're working with. So specifying patterns to which some data should conform and then checking to see if it does. So first of all, the first part of pattern matching is that we want to see if these patterns match each other. So based on the given data, does it match? And if it does, it's a matched pattern. And the second part is it is deconstructing the data. So based on the given data set, we want to be able to pluck out a specific values based on the pattern. We'll see that in a bit as well. This is the easiest form of pattern matching. So the syntax looks exactly like a case statement. All right, and there is a good reason for that, because it is actually built on top of a case statement. So pattern matching is an enhanced case statement with a little bit of quirks. There are a lot of differences, but essentially it has the same structure and operates in almost the same way. And why I say almost, I will show you one single quirk that is completely different from how a case statement works. So what can we match? So we've talked about, like how we try to get patterns, but the patterns, what can we declare as a pattern? So the first thing that we can do, super simple, we can declare literal values. So we have an array of 1, 2, 3, and when we see 1, 2, 3, we want to say like, hey, this is exactly this array. The important thing is that if we have 3 elements and we are trying to match against 3 elements, they have to match. So the length of the array must match and the values must match exactly. You can put a type, and that's on the next slide. So also take a look, there is a subtle difference between matching on an array and also matching on a hash. So this is both available and we can do exactly the same thing. Same thing as 1, 2, 3. You can also do case first name, last name. The caveat between matching on arrays and hashes is that hashes do not need to match exactly. So in this example, if the array that we're trying to match against the data that is coming in from the user, if that one has more values, this is still a match. So just to reiterate, when you match an array, it has to match exactly. When you match a hash, you can match partially. So that's the first one. So literal values. Second thing that we can go ahead and match, we can create patterns around types. Same thing with our triple equality check and what we were doing before. We can go ahead and say like any given integer, as long as we match here that this is the pattern that we're looking for. Same thing with the hash. We can go ahead and say, given that both of these values are string, then this is what we would like to match. We can also go ahead and pass in multiple values. As long as one of them matches, then we can go ahead and consider that a matched pattern. So the pipe operator in this example says this is an OR. Any one of them matches, this is gonna be good to go. All right, so this is where it gets a little bit hairy, where we do not need to just match top level values. We can go and nest our values within the data structure. So given this data structure, we have a hash, and all it does is it has a name and an array of orders. And the array of orders, it is a 2-level nested hash, where the top one just has the ID and the shipping address, and that's also another hash within it. So we have a hash that has an array, which has a hash that has a hash. Okay, so easy enough to see here that when we are trying to match it, we can say, but by the way, this is an alternative syntax in the, am I pointing in the right place? Yeah, so when you see the in name, there are no brackets around it. There are no curly brackets around it. That is also acceptable. So we're trying to match anything that has a name, and after that, it's an order of type of an array. And over here, what we are trying to do is that we are trying to get the first element. Okay, so if you see on the first element, then we have a hash, and right after that, there's a star. So we can also try to ignore some values or try to, like go ahead and not match them. So this is a fix for the initial problem that, we were talking about, where the array has to match completely in length. but that's not always really useful. So there is a workaround where you can use an asterisk, and that will try to ignore anything beyond that. So in this example, what we're trying to do is that we're trying to get the first city of the first order from the shipping address. The first city of the first order inside of the shipping address. Okay, so we go ahead and say these are the orders and give us the first one. So we're matching against the first one, and we are partially over here, we are partially matching just shipping address. We have ignored the ID. This is also still valid because hashes can be matched partially. Okay, we'll come a second. And also, if you've taken a look here, like right before we left, we are assigning the value city. So we're giving it a variable, which we have not said anywhere else, but we can actually start using it. So this is another really powerful thing about the pattern matching pattern, is that we are able to assign values directly. So if you remember the initial explanation of what a pattern matching was, the first element was that we need to match a specific pattern. The second thing goes and we say we want to deconstruct the values. And this is us deconstructing a value. We try to pluck out the city of Kuala Lumpur from the first order. And here we go, we see like match, and then we get the city. So this city is exactly the city. And then we say match Kuala Lumpur, because this was the first element. Okay, that's a lot to take in. It gets better. Same thing here. When we have an array that we want to pluck a value out of and we want to deconstruct it, we can pass in the list, this new syntax. This is a new right-hand side assignment, where the assignment usually is on the left-hand side, where the variable that we want to put the data into is on the left, but this is a right-hand side assignment where the variable is on the right. So, and of course, we cannot use the same equal. We have to use this fat rocket, which we are used to from versions of like Ruby pre 2.1. And this is the exact syntax for you to extract the value. So again, we have a pattern, and then we also are able to deconstruct values. I don't need to deconstruct a second value, so I do not put it in. So I can just say like, just give me this first variable. As long as this array matches where there are two integers, give me the first value. And this is what we consider to be a complete pattern match. All right, so we've touched a little bit on arrays having to be of a fixed length, which is not always great. And then we use the asterisk, just like how we are used to in the arguments. In the list of arguments, if you put an asterisk, it means I want to ignore anything beyond this point. So very, very similar. If we want to ignore, there are many ways that we can do it, and it's exactly how you would do it with the array of keywords. Yeah. Star just means whatever after that is fair game. I want to match it, but I don't care about it. And over here, we're saying like anything in the first location, match it to A. So that's great. So second thing here, same thing. It says anything here, match it to the first variable, which is A. And then this is a little subtlety. If you have ever seen this in use as like asterisk args or asterisk remaining or rest. So all this means is collect everything beyond this point, beyond the first point, and add it into an array. So this is where it creates a new array, and then, you know, like it destructures it inside of this array called rest. And that's what the asterisk right in front of the rest means. And you can see here we have an array called rest and the remaining values. Same thing, if we did A, B, rest, there will be a new array with just the number 3 in it. And that's it. And if there's nothing that matches, it will be an empty array. This will always match an array. When doing the same thing with keyword with hashes that we want to map, the same thing that we can do with keyword arguments instead of just arguments, where we are able to do 2 asterisks. Okay, so we use 2 asterisks instead of 1. 1 symbolizes an array, but in this example, we do not need an array. We don't want an array. We want the remainder, the rest of the variables inside of this hash. So 2 of them. By the way, this is the exact same syntax that you use when you use the keyword arguments inside of your methods. Cool. So we've talked about being able to deconstruct values into our pattern. We can also use variables in our patterns. Okay, let's take a look at that, and we'll see some pitfalls of pattern matching and what variable pinning solves. By the way, variable pinning is a relatively new feature. This is in 3.1, and this comes to solve a really nuanced problem that is quite uh, limiting in terms of like what you want to do. Let's go and take a look at it. So first thing is we assign a variable outside the context of the pattern that we're trying to match. Okay, so we have a pre-assigned variable named Kuala Lumpur. Okay, and then what we're trying to match, if this case matches city, if this Kuala Lumpur matches this Kuala Lumpur, we're gonna say this is the best city in the world. Okay, so of course we have this statement that we are trying to match. This is our pattern, and then this is the pattern, we want to match it literally, and this is our variable. In our variable, does it match literally? Yes, it does. So we can use variables given in from anywhere else. So this could be like data that you load from the user, from the database, anywhere that you already have, and you can start using in your patterns, which is great. Okay, so this works exactly as expected. But this second example, this one runs us into a problem. All right, let's take a look. So same thing, we have the city of Kuala Lumpur, and then we also have an order. This order is very simple. We just have a billing address, and it contains the city. It says Petaling Jaya. So notice right here in the pattern that we're trying to match. Okay, given this order, which is right over here, does this match where we have a billing address and it has a city, and then we're trying to assign the city? But also remember, we already have assigned city before. What does that mean for us now? So city is Kuala Lumpur. We are trying to match Kuala Lumpur. Okay, but what happens here? When we try to look at our output, it says shipping to Kuala Lumpur. But that's in this example, and it should have been Kuala Lumpur. But actually, and then when we try to print out city, it says Petaling Jaya. So what has happened here? What has happened here is that when we were trying to match this pattern, we actually reassigned this value before we were able to match it to the variable that we have pre-assigned. So because this matches exactly this pattern, we have a hash it has a billing address, it has a billing address, this has a city, this has a city, and from what we've just learned, anything that you assign here, it will assign it to this variable right here. So obviously this is going to cause a bug because like you imagine that, hey, I've already said that city is going to be Kuala Lumpur, and then I want it to match exactly. And then we're gonna go ahead with the assumption that this is going to ship to Kuala Lumpur, but in fact it is not. It has been reassigned and it's actually going to ship to Petaling Jaya. So this is the problem. So due to the variable binding feature, because pattern matching rebinds values, it can reassign values that are existent in the context. It can even reassign values that do not exist in the context yet. But since we do, it actually rebinds it. Okay, so due to the variable binding feature, existing local variables cannot be straightforwardly used as a sub pattern. All right, so if we go back, we're trying to use it here, like this variable, we're trying to use it in our sub pattern, but then what it has gone ahead and done is has reassigned it because of the variable binding feature. So that actually really sucks, and this is going to cause us a lot of bugs, but fear not, there's a very, very simple solution, and this is what is known as variable pinning. So this is really important in this context. So when we pin a variable, all we need to do is add the hat character right before it. So we assign like, all right, this is a hat, and then this is city. So this says this variable cannot be reassigned. Okay, this has, unless it is nil. So there's a little caveat there. So this value cannot be reassigned if it has already been assigned. And we have assigned it right here. We check on it. We're trying to figure out like, hey, does this match where it has an order that has a hash with a billing address and that is going to the city of this pinned variable, which is right here. We already assigned this pinned variable. So does it go to Kuala Lumpur? And then it says no, because this one is actually going to Petaling Jaya. So, and then it goes ahead and like reads us the else clause and then says like Tito Finito, nothing to do. We're shipping to a different city, and this works exactly as you picture it. If this order is being shipped to Kuala Lumpur, it is actually going to match right here. Else, this is not going to. So that's variable pinning. And there's also another caveat that variable pinning assigns. So say we do not have the variable in the beginning, all right, and we want to figure out like our order. Is the billing address and the shipping address the same? So this is a variable that we want to pick out from our pattern, which is the second thing we deconstruct. We want to be able to deconstruct it directly from the pattern. And then guess what? We want to match it against our shipping address. So we have one city right here, Petaling Jaya. We want to take it up, assign it in this sub pattern, and then we want to use it here directly in this sub pattern. So of course, this is not going to be great because we are trying to reassign the same value. And of course, this gives us an exception as well. It says duplicated variable name. So you cannot use the same variable name. And even if it's one or the other, it will not let you reassign the value. It will raise an exception and you cannot proceed. And tells you that this one is duplicate. But that's not great. We want to be able to use the value from the pattern directly. So the initial value here, we want to match it and say like, hey, the billing address is PJ, and then the shipping address, we want to match it. Does that match Kuala Lumpur? Yes, it does, and no, it does not. Again, variable pinning solves that exact problem. The first time around, we want to deconstruct that value. We do not put a hat right in front of it and say, okay, whatever is in here, match it and deconstruct it into this variable. But the second time around, when you see that, we want to use it as a subpattern. And this is when we use the hat. We're using the pinned variable that we have reassigned in the first pattern. And it says that, all right, given that this is the city of like Petaling Jaya, and then like, does this match? And of course, it does not match in this instance. It says shipping to a different city. All right, so we've picked out, does this match this? Do these two values match each other? They do not match each other, given this exact same pattern. All right, so this is all well and good, and this is all really important, but how do you start using it in your own objects? Because a lot of the times you have data structure that is more complex than just an array or just an hash or just like a primitive object. So what you want to do is that you want to go ahead and create your own objects and match against them. All right, so again, of course, this has been solved. So very important, array patterns. So if you want to match against an array, you can go ahead and all you need to do is just create a method called deconstruct. And we will take a look at what deconstruct will do for us. And if you want to do the same against a hash, you need to create a method called deconstruct keys. All right, so confusing, but let's take a look. All right, given a class called point, and this point just has two different values, an x and a y. All right, and then we can initialize it, and then we say like, hey, when this point equals to 1 and 2, match it. This is what we want to do. We want to match against this point. But of course, it does not know how to match this point specifically. So it's trying to match like, is this an array? Well, in fact, it is not. So it will not match. So this is the problem that we're trying to solve by like, we have a custom class, we have a user-defined class that we're trying to match it against a specific pattern, but it does not know how to do that. So if you remember, for array patterns, all we need to do is just create a method called deconstruct. And this is our method inside of the class called deconstruct. And then when we say, whenever this method is called, or like whenever this pattern is trying to be figured out whether it matches or not, this is going to be called, and you should just return it as an array. And then now, when we match against this array right here, 1, 2, which is x and y, and then now it completely matches. All right, just because we've gone ahead and done everything that we needed to do, which is to create this method called deconstruct and return the values of how they would be able to match. So you can return this thing in either an array format or a single value or a hash. So the hash is different, where you need to create a method called deconstruct keys. We'll take a look at it right here. This is a little bit of a more complex situation. So we have a user. think about it, this could be your active record user. And does not just have to be a very simple like a value, but we don't want to match every single element or attribute within this thing. We can pick and match what we want. So differently from the deconstruct method, there is a significant difference here where it's not only that it's just called differently. When you say deconstruct keys, you also receive the value of keys. Okay, you don't need to do anything with it, but when the pattern is matching, it will send the pattern that it's trying to match. So what would keys be here in this example is that once it goes and tries to match against this first pattern, it will return title, first name, last name. These are the array of keys that we will receive here. Okay, and then how we want it to look like is that we want to return a title, a first name, and a last name. Okay, so this one is a little bit of a doozy. We have a user, and any of these values could be nil, and all of these values can be nil. Okay, so what we can say is like, if everything in here, by the way, we are matching against self. We are not saying what pattern it is, we're saying self. Self is going to refer to deconstruct keys. So again, whenever you pass in the object, it will go ahead and pass to this here. And when we are within the context of the object, we want to match against ourselves, we can use self. Okay, so it's really powerful here. Again, so when everything is a string, when everything has value, we want to go ahead and return, like the title and an abbreviated name. We just want, the initial and then the last name. Okay, and same thing, it goes right down to the bottom. If it matches nothing, we're going to return guess. So we can quickly look at these examples. We have Mr. John Smith. It says Mr. J. Smith. John Smith, it just says John S, because like this last name, we just want the initial of the last name. And first name John, it just says John. When we have last name Smith, it just says Smith. And then when there's nothing, it just says guest. Okay, so this is also a simple, straightforward way that you are matching this data. But the key here to notice is the deconstruct keys. And that's how we are able to create our custom matchers or custom patterns within our own objects. Okay, so we've talked about a very brief overview of what we can do. So what's an example? Like, how can I go back and start using this today? The first thing you need to do is upgrade your Ruby version. It's like most of us work on projects that have outdated Ruby versions, and it is hard to keep your project up to date, but it is also vital for you to be able to get such features. So first example we're going to take a look at is that if you have a like a hash of a response. So usually this you'd get like from HTTP request or maybe like the database. In this example, it's a HTTP request as an example, and it returns, it has a status and it also has data. Okay, so we can go ahead and start like figuring out like, hey, when my like data is returned like this is how we want to match it. In this example, we want to match against a 2-level nested, actually 3-level nested value, which is the country. So when the status is okay, and the country is nil, okay, when there's no country, okay, we want to say, hey, country is unknown, but it was actually successful. It wasn't a failed response. Same thing here is that when we want to say this is also a state is okay, but then now we have a country, and then now we can actually reassign the country that we know. Very important to remember one thing. How you order your patterns is also very important. So if we were to put this the second clause right at the top, it will always match. Why? Because we're not saying whatever you get here, you assign it to country. We can also say assign country to nil, nil to country. So this is also a value that it will match. So if we have this just in the reverse order where like the variable being assigned and deconstructed right on top, it will actually always say like, yeah, fine, country is nothing, which is a bug. So always remember, you want to put your edge cases right at the top. You want to be able to get all the values that you actually do not want. And in this example, we're matching specifically literally nil. So we put that on top to say like, hey, this is unknown. And then we go down the chain. You'll be like, oh, okay, when it's not nil. Okay, so this is very important distinction when we want to get like a guard clause of sorts against this nil value. Okay, so this is a very simplistic example. We come back to something more complex. Okay, so this one is in the context of Rails. Say we also have, like a class of points, and this class has a latitude and a longitude. So this could be a class that you use within multiple models, location model, or like user's last location, or anything like that. So we save the like the primitive values of latitude and longitude on the model itself. But when we want to interact with it, we want to interact with it as an object. So all we're doing here is we're wrapping these two values within the location model. We're wrapping them into this point right here. And then we also say, hey, whenever you are matched, whenever somebody is trying to match you, this is what you return. You will return an array format, an array pattern, and latitude first, longitude second. Okay, so very simple. Okay, in the context of this validator, by the way, we have a custom validator right here. It says validate point. It should be of type point. Okay, and it's very it's very fixed what a point is. It's predetermined. Okay, we have some idea of what a point should look like. Uh, First of all, both the latitude and the longitude should be present. Okay, so over here we're checking like is the latitude nil, and if it's and is the longitude nil. If they're both nil, we want to return an error just to say latitude and longitude are required. Okay, both of them are fixed in one. Okay, we don't want to show two errors. Second one, if just latitude is nil, we say latitude is required. Same thing with longitude. And now we have more complex validation that we want to run against. Given that there is a value, we want to make sure that it is within, within the 90 and negative 90 range. Okay, so we don't want it to be out of bounds. So we don't want it to be negative 91 or 95 or anything within that variable. So we want to keep it within the latitude fixed format. Same thing with longitude. It has to be within the 180 to negative 180. And if it's not matching within, we want to return an error message that says longitude must be within negative 180 to 180. So of course, this is a talk about pattern matching. So the solution is pattern matching. So just to simplify, so now we are not asking the variable or the values, what is your type? Previously, we were checking like, excuse me, are you nil? Are you nil? Are you nil? Are you less? Are you more? So we was, like doing asking. We were doing a lot of asking. We have a variable, and then we say like, hey, what is your value? But now we do not need to do such thing. We can now match against it directly to say like, hey, whenever you match, what are you? When you are two nils, latitude and longitude are required. Okay, so now we are not checking again, like we are not checking. We are only matching. When you look like this, do this. When this looks like that, do that. Okay. Okay. So the second thing here is that when latitude is nil, because we know that's the first value, when latitude is nil, and over here, an underscore. An underscore says whatever value. Okay. Whatever value that is here, we will accept it. Okay. So when latitude is nil when the latitude is nil and longitude is any value that is not nil, okay, we're just going to return latitude is required. Same thing here, longitude is required. And now we have like a beginless and an endless range. So we can just use that very simply. When this is anything less than negative 89 or more than 91, okay, we're going to say like, hey, you must be within this range. Okay, so this is also a newish, I think, Ruby 2.7 feature, a beginless and an endless range. Also super cool. And then over here, we say whatever the value here, we ignore it. So either one here or either one there. And if it is, then we're just going to return the error that the longitude must be between negative 180 and 180. All right, so this is a very simple way to get started. And just now I mentioned there was one last thing. There was one little caveat, one big significant difference between a case statement when you do case when and when you do a case in. Okay, this is that difference. Okay, when you do a case that you do not match, it just returns nil. Okay, so when you do case when and there's no matches, it just treats it as life goes on, nil, all good. When you do a case in, if there's a pattern that does not match, this will raise an exception. Okay, so if you go back and see, we always use an else just because we do not like wanted to raise an exception when actually it is valid. So when it is none of these things. Okay, so that's one big thing to keep out, to watch out for, that when you are doing any type of like pattern matching, either all your patterns have to match or there's going to be an exception, and either just like try to swallow it with an else, or like handle it elsewhere where like where you rescue a no matching pattern error. And yeah, give it a go, see how it goes for you. And this is just a very brief introduction, and I hope you get curious enough to give it a try. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Has. I wouldn't say it's like a quick introduction. It's definitely, to me, feel like a very good deep dive. You have like all the examples and talk about variable pinning, and you have very concrete real life examples about how to match all this. So very, very thankful. And I guess, sorry,
Welcome.
I was continuing Jimmy's tradition of misspelling your name. I'll keep a mental note on
Yeah, no, no worries, no worries, no worries.
that.
It wasn't a dig at you, it was a dig at Jimmy. So like, haven't seen him in a long time. So yeah.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see any questions currently. There was a question on like where is city defined, but I think you talked about it.
Oh yeah, so it was
Yeah.
defined right at the top, like
Yep.
outside of the scope of the pattern.
Yeah, and I think most of the stuff that you showcase are in 2.7 and 3.1, I believe.
Correct,
Right.
correct.
So
So
yeah.
like you need at least 2.7, and like a variable pinning is 3.1. Okay, so it is all like it's super useful like when you look at it. And so like you've got to need to upgrade, but again, Rail 7 does not support 3.1 yet, so there's that. So you gotta try to figure that one out yourself. Yeah.
Yep. I think I saw the triple equals, right? The triple equals is quite common in JavaScript, but it
It
behave
is
different.
exactly completely different. Yeah. So this is like also like trying to know where the equality is checking from. Is it on the left side or the right side? When you do like a triple check, we're trying to follow the left bit. Okay, so that is why sometimes like that question was like 5 triple equals to integer is false, but it kind of is true. But then like in this syntax specifically, it is not true. So when you say is integer, like is 5 a type of the left side, which is the integer? It says yes, absolutely.
And just now you mentioned about this, like just now you mentioned about city and the variable pinning, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of this, it seems like there is a scope in terms of
Hmm.
variables.
Oh,
So
absolutely. Yeah.
so when you are inside that block or inside that
Yeah.
scope, the variables are basically only exist inside there. So it doesn't include the global variable
It does when it matches.
or when it
So like
matches. Okay.
yeah, so it does so, and then it can also override the globals, but then of course the global will not override the one within the subpattern. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's that technicality that you have to figure out, which is why like the variable pinning is so important to make this a very useful feature. Yeah.
Yep, yep. Yeah, this looks, I would say, very promising in terms of a lot of like matching patterns.
I agree. I agree. Just like being able to match things coming in from the user input, maybe like like you have a giant filter for reports. You can start matching like how the params look like, how they like what type of range is. Also, like pretty obvious to say like, oh, that's a great use case, but which we didn't have before.
And about the star, I think the star symbol, right?
Correct.
It mentions that it's the remainder variables. How about
Yeah.
we want to match partial? So we have
Yeah.
the front, the middle
Mhm.
with a star, and the
Yeah.
back we want to match.
You can
Will that
100%.
work?
So yes, it will work as well. So like you can put that anywhere, and then like the star will say like anything in between that works, or you can use an underscore to say like this. There's only one value, but we're gonna ignore that. So like it depends like whether you know that there's one value or you want to have like multiple values.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, and it will work with hashes too, right? Because you mentioned how
Yeah,
hashes is like partial. It's
correct. Yeah, so like you don't need to put in all the keys, as long as the keys within the sub pattern they exist within your, then you're done. Select it.
okay.
Yeah,
Makes sense. Yeah, it's yeah, this is very new. I would say there's a lot of use case around this, and yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's super nice. Like give it a try, like play around with it. Hopefully, like we'll be able to use 3.1 with Rails 7 soon, and then like I'm pretty sure we'll see a lot more use cases. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. See any other question from anyone who's watching? Can ask questions. Anyone? Okay, no one. Okay, there's no question. Oh, what?
Oh, haram, bro. Haram.
Spam looks like spam.
It's
Yeah, it looks
definitely
like
spam.
But yeah, any more questions from
That was
anyone?
yeah, yeah.
I guess that's it. But yeah, I also
So yeah, I'm on Slack. Like if you have a question or if you want to teach me something, because like I'm still pretty just as new as anybody else, like doing this, just like please share anything that you find on pattern matching. There's quite a number of good resources actually. Yeah,
nice. Yeah, maybe we could try one day as part of like code cleaning or something.
that'd be
We
great.
can
Yeah,
try
that'd
out
be great.
pattern
Yeah.
matching. Once again, Has,
Mhm.
thanks so much for this. This is like for me, it's like so valuable because I can learn. Like your slides are so concise, I learn a lot. So yeah,
Thank you so much. Like I really appreciate you having me. Thanks a lot.
thanks.
Yep, that's my name. That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. So I kind of reintroduced parking lot, which is like if anybody has anything to share about Ruby, that's like one or two things. I think what Has mentioned earlier on Rails not supporting 3.1 yet. I think they are planning to release 7.0.1 to kind of fix the Rails 3. Sorry, the Ruby 3.1 compatibility. But they are. I see people post like what you need to do to get it working. Quite a bit of workaround, but I guess we can wait for the patch. So is anybody interested to see, for example, what Has demoed earlier with all the pattern matching and whatnot? So yeah, wait for a bit. Rails 7.0.1 is coming soon. If you can't wait, there are resources available on like things you can do to be Ruby 3.1 compatible. Yeah, anything else to share? Let me think. I don't have anything. I think RubyConf videos dropped like last month, I believe. So if anybody is interested, you can go to YouTube to look for the RubyConf videos. They're all available there right now. I haven't watched any yet, unfortunately. So yeah, maybe we could do a watch party someday as well. Anything else? I think that's about it. Good. Anything or has even anything to share?
Um, like this is not new, and I just mentioned it just now. Like, but the endless and the beginless ranges are effing powerful. And you can use them directly with Rails. So like if you have just an end date, just for an example, and no start date, then you can just do like dot dot end date, and then like Active Record will already go ahead and figure that one out. And even if you do, but the value is nil, that also works. So you can literally say nil dot dot end date. That will also work just as exactly as you imagine it. Active Record takes care of it and removes that value, and then just says like when it's like a less than. So super useful thing that you can use to clean up a lot of like date ranges that you may have that you want to get out of. All you need to do is just get the variable and then pass it in. No more if checks. Yeah. So beginless and endless ranges. Yeah. That's I thought it was like a really fun one, like that I've recently discovered.
Yeah, and makes the code look very concise as well. I think for the longitude latitude you
Oh yeah.
showcased earlier, like you can
Yep.
kind of like read it really concisely. Like okay, anything more than for it feels like a more than less than kind of thing because it's like there's
It
no
is. Yeah.
beginning, there's no end, right? So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I really enjoy working with it. Like you can do it not just on like integers. You can do it on dates as well. So, or you can also implement how you want to do your own, like ranges as well. So you can also do that.
Nice tip. Thanks, Has.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
For Ruby, I think there's a release message about reverting do not include external library sources into packages. So yeah, it's like one of the release note from Ruby. I think someone adds something into Ruby 3.1.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of things in 3.1, but we probably won't go into detail on all this.
Yeah.
Maybe you could take one.
Because
One quick unique.
I think if there's one to look at, like, sorry to cut you off, is definitely the new debugger, like 100% improvement. Yeah. So, like, one of the error messages that I showed on the slides just now, like where you get like squiggly lines right under which variable, and like it starts pointing directly at the line, at the at the character. So if you just look up the new debugger that is built into Ruby 3.1, super powerful stuff.
Yeah, it's I'm not promising anything, but it's a top topic. I kind of like juggling with it, so maybe one day might do it. Let's see.
Yep. Yeah, this is one of the message saying that do not include external. So someone includes something that not supposed to be there. Yeah, I think it's fun.
Okay.
And I think Ruby 3.1 should also improve on static types, because right now, like Ruby trying to go into like static types realm, like TypeScript, which I think it's quite new. Not sure like how that will affect in terms of compatibility wise. But yeah, static types, and I think it's and just in time compilation, and stuff also.
Yep. Cool. I guess that's it for parking lot. Let's see if there's can we use it without upgrading to 3.1? I think debugger does allow you to use where's the gem? I'm not sure what's the Ruby version they support actually. I don't think they mentioned exactly which Ruby version they support as well. It's definitely a separate gem, so there is a possibility. Tristan, because Tristan was asking about using the debug gem in version before 3.1. I don't see any official mention on it, but possible to try, I guess. Right. Yeah. So a quick one. So we won't be having a Ruby Tuesday next month in February because it's like public holiday and festive season. So I don't think anybody's available. But we're having our next session in March. So do check out our meetup as well. Let me go to the URL meetup.com/Ruby Malaysia if you want to keep informed of the events that are happening. And one last thing before we go, of course, was the Fogwell. So if you sign up and complete your profile at Fogwell, you stand a chance to win a 50 ringgit Grab voucher. So this has been the first Ruby Tuesday of the year. I'll see everybody in March then.
Thanks a lot for organizing.
Thank you.
You guys.